Rod Sims, welcome to the Centre for Media Transitions newsletter, and thank you very, very much for being with us today. Can I begin by asking you, the code is 1 year old today. Is it a success in your view?
I think it's unquestionably a success. If you'd have asked me a year ago, what if we had over $200 million a year going into journalism? What if we had just about every media company getting a deal from Facebook and Google? Now, obviously, there's one or two exceptions there now with Facebook particularly, but just about everybody's got a deal, large, medium and small. I'd have said, well, that's a great outcome. And so I think it's been one of the most successful bits of public policy I've been associated with in over 50 years, Monica. So I think it's really successful.
Do you think that the deals negotiated on the side which has seen that money flow through to media organisations have in any way undermined the purpose of the code, of the legislation?
No, I don't think so. The code had a particular objective. That objective was to even up the bargaining power. So we looked at, commercial companies on one side, which is Google and Facebook, commercial companies on the other side, which is the large, medium and small media companies. And clearly the media companies had just essentially no bargaining power, no matter how big they were with Facebook and Google. They were basically take it or leave it dealings with them. And that comes about because every media company needs to be on both Facebook and Google, but Facebook and Google don't need any particular media company, so no one has any hold over it. So the purpose of the code was just to even up the bargaining power. It did that, and so we then got from going to a position where there were no deals of any substance. Any deals that were done were pretty lousy, to where you had deals done that the media companies were clearly very happy with. So I think it achieved that purpose of evening up the bargaining power, which is what it was meant to do.
Are you at all bothered by the lack of transparency around some of the deal, or in fact all of the deals between the platforms and outlets?
No, I'm not, because I think this is one of the issues with the bargaining code. I've had people say to me, you've had the news media bargaining code, and I'll come back to your question, but you've had your news media bargaining code, but there's still problems in the media. And I'm saying, well, we didn't, with this one instrument, seek to solve all the problems of the media. And that's why we had other recommendations that we made to government about continuing to fund the ABC, about having money for regional news media businesses. There's a range of things you need to do. But the code was just meant to make sure that those who had content now could get appropriately paid for it. Now, had there never been a bargaining imbalance, and therefore the companies just got on and did it themselves without any need for government legislation, you'd have never known what the terms of the deal were anyway. So no, that transparency was not the objective. It was that good deals could be done. And how do I know they're successful? Well, essentially because those same media people that I was speaking to at one stage said, look, we just can't get anywhere with Facebook and Google, then told me they were happy with the deals. And that's large, medium and small companies saying they were very happy with the deals. So that was the job achieved.
You don't consider that the lack of transparency, in a sense, undermines public confidence that the money that is flowing to media is actually going towards the production of public interest journalism?
No, because, if it was government money you were handing out, then that needs complete transparency. You need to know everything about where the money's going, why it's going, where it's going, and what do you get for the money being spent. This isn't government money. This is just evening up the bargaining power so that two commercial companies can do commercial deals, whereas previously you couldn't do commercial deals because one of them was working on a take it or leave it basis, which is not surprising. If if you or I, Monica, were in the position of Google with 95% search, or Facebook, we'd probably be doing deals on a not take it or leave it basis as well. The other thing that gives me confidence that it's worked well is I have had journalists say to me, there's never been a better time to be a journalist. I have spoken to media companies that are hiring people. Yes, on some occasions they've said, actually, we were going to reduce numbers more and now we're not. So, how do you prove that one? Well, you don't. You've got to take it at face value. But I think journalists are better able to get a job now, and that's a good thing. But look, you're closer to all that, Monica. You might have a view on that, but I've certainly had that feedback that there's more journalists getting hired now.
That is certainly the impression that you get, and certainly the impression that I have looking at it from the outside at the moment. So in your view, then, it has served to protect public interest journalism and quality journalism?
Yes, I think it has. Now, different people have views about different media outlets, and that's as it should be. But, we have an array of outlets in Australia. The purpose of the media of the bargaining code was to make sure those who produce content now, and of course the four biggest players are the ABC, Nine, News Corp, and then possibly a bit of a gap to Seven. They're the ones who employ most journalists in Australia. And then you've got ACM, SBS, and then you go down and you've got Guardian and a range of others. So, and I think just having the journalists that are there now, so I would guess, Monica, that, I'm making up a number, but let's say 98% of journalists work for a media organisation that has got a deal. And, how often are they doing public interest journalism? I don't know, but I know they're doing public interest journalism. Some of them may be doing sports broadcasting, although some of us might say that's in the public interest. So it gets into murky concepts of what is and what isn't, and which media companies you like. I mean, as we both know, there's people out in society that do not like News Corp. There's people in society who don't like the ABC. I had Paul Keating tell me what a dreadful decision it was that we allowed Nine to take over Fairfax. So there's all sorts of views out there. We didn't put ourselves in that position. We just wanted existing journalism to be properly rewarded for the content they're producing. That's what this was all about. I mean, in my view, you'll always, unless government intervenes, you won't have enough journalism. The main tool of government intervention is the ABC and SBS, both essential in my view. But you'll always have a diversity of media with a diversity of opinions and a diversity of approaches. And different people will have different views. It wasn't our job to enter into that, very emotive debate. I think we do have a spectrum of opinion in Australia. We can all have a view about where you put companies on the left and right spectrum, but it's a pretty broad spectrum. Yes, of course, you might like it a bit different at times, but basically, I think funding, making sure the existing journalism work gets rewarded, we've done that. That helps public interest journalism. If you want to do more to help public interest journalism, then you may need a different way of doing that. You may need a different instrument. I mean, I'm pretty big, Monica, on instruments and objectives. And, the objective here was commercial deals between equal bargaining power. We got that. If you want to do more to promote more public interest journalism than we have now, not just to protect what we've got and enhance what we've got, if you want to actually alter that, that's a different objective. My own view is the best way the government does that is through the ABC and SBS. But I also think there is a case for the government giving a little, further money to regional media as well, because we just want our regional people out in regional areas to make sure they've got their own source of news as well. So I'd like to see more news there. And of course, when you talk about that, the big issue you get into is, should it be printed paper or should it be digital? My own view is the way its future is going to be digital. You know, I understand people don't like losing their newspaper, but gee, at the end of the day, you can just flick the switch and out it goes.
Yes, I think you're right. But on that issue of regional, in terms of the code, do you think that there should be some tinkering with the threshold issue so that more regional players, some of those very, very small publishers, even family-owned businesses of 1-2 people, can access deals in some way?
Well, your knowledge on this is probably most definitely better than mine. What I understand is, of course, you've got ACM out there in a number of places, but you've got Country Press Australia, which we authorise to collectively bargain, and which got a very good deal from Facebook and separately from Google. How do I know that? They told me that they got a good deal. They were very pleased with the deal. That's, I think, 180 publications owned by about 60 media owners. So you've got some pretty small players as part of Country Press Australia. Honestly, Monica, I don't know who else is out there besides ACM, Country Press Australia. Of course, Fairfax and News Corp have got some players out there. Well, 9 now, and News Corp have got, and obviously 7 West has got some in WA as well. So basically all the players I've just mentioned are looked after. I'm honestly not sure how many are left over. But if they are left over, I urge them to join Country Press Australia and join in the deal that way.
A final question, Rod. Would you like to see the code activated, at least in relation to some who feel left out in the cold?
Yeah, a few points on that if I could, Monica. It's a really important question, particularly with the review coming up. So first of all, the way we wanted the code to work was to even up the bargaining power. The way we did that was through arbitration. You know, if you negotiate, you can't get a deal, then you're going to get baseball arbitration. You're going to get a particular form of rigid arbitration. You have to put a good deal on the table, because if you don't put a good deal on the table, the arbitrators are just going to go with the other person's deal. So it was a big threat. We were hoping people wouldn't use it, because it's much better if the parties negotiate something than something is imposed on them. Although with baseball arbitration, picking between one of the two options, it still could, have worked out fairly well, but much better to have it negotiated. So we wanted arbitration to be the almost threat, if you like, to force good deals. I mean, if I'm negotiating with you, sorry to run on, Monica, but if I'm negotiating with you and you're a monopoly, I can't do anything, right? You just do what you want to do. But if there's a law passed that says, if I can't reach a deal with you, then I can go to arbitration. Now you're going to listen to me, right? Because I've got this power to go to an arbitrator, and you could lose control of the outcome. So we never wanted people to go to arbitration. We just wanted the threat there to be used, and happy if it was used. Now, what happened in the code is that threat of arbitration was replaced by the threat of designation. What we learned was that Facebook and Google just did not want to get designated. So the treasurer said, right, we'll go out and do deals, right? If you don't do deals, you'll get designated. So the threat moved. So to answer the question, I think Google is still, on my understanding, doing a few more deals. They've done deals with SBS in the conversation. They've done deals with a lot of players. Particularly if they do this last set of deals, I think you could well say that Google have done the job.
They've covered the field.
Facebook, on the other hand, have not. I mean, not doing a deal with SBS in the conversation. I mean, how do you justify that? SBS, you talk about public interest journalism, it is giving news to multicultural Australia. And then the conversation is just it is the outlet for a whole lot of university voices. So how can you, that if there were two sort of mastheads, as it were, that were meant to get deals, it was the SBS and the conversation. So I think Facebook's running a serious risk of getting designated. Because if they don't do deals with SBS in the conversation, I think that is just contrary to the intention of the code. So I think that's where the rubber hits the road, right there.
And you would like to see that happen? You'd prefer to see them designated? You'd like to see them designated on those two issues, on those two outlets?
I would like to see them do deals with SBS and The Conversation. Now, if they can do those deals to avoid designation, that's fine. If they don't do those deals, then I think designation probably needs to occur. Yeah.
Rod, I thank you very, very much for your time.
A pleasure, Monica, and lovely to speak to you again.